What it's like to be every rank in the Italian Mafia, Cosa Nostra. Level 1. The neighborhood kid. The smell hits you first. Espresso and motor oil. Bread from the bakery 2 doors down. Cigarette smoke from the old men sitting outside the social club on folding chairs, playing cards in the afternoon heat, saying nothing to nobody, watching everything. You are 11 years old. You live on a street where the garbage gets collected on time, where nobody's car gets broken into, where a woman can walk home at midnight and arrive safely. You don't know why. You just know that this street is different from the streets 4 blocks over, and you know in the wordless way children know things, that the difference has something to do with the men outside that club. Your uncle is one of those men. He is not rich. He wears the same 3 shirts in rotation. He drives a 10-year-old Fiat. But when he walks into a room, something changes. The air pressure shifts. People finish their sentences faster. Bartenders pour without being asked. You watch him the way you watch a magician. Not because you believe in magic. Because you want to know how it's done. What you think this world is, a neighborhood. A community. People looking out for each other. What it actually is, a taxation system without a government. An enforcement mechanism without a badge. A corporation that has been operating continuously for over 150 years, and has survived every war, every prosecution, and every reformist government that has ever tried to dismantle it. But you are 11. You just know that your uncle's handshake opens doors. You file that away. Level 2, the messenger. You are 15 when they first use you. It is nothing dramatic. No smoke-filled room. No's. No one sits you down and explains what is happening. That is the point. That is always the point. Your uncle asks you to bring an envelope to a man who runs a hardware store on Via Makeda. You take the bus. You hand over the envelope. The man gives you a smaller envelope in return. You bring it back. Your uncle nods. He gives you 20 euros and tells you to buy yourself something. That's it. The envelope weighs almost nothing. You don't know what's inside. You don't ask. You already understand, instinctively, that not asking is the first correct answer you will ever give in this world. They call it running an errand. What that means is you have just become a vehicle for communication between 2 nodes in a network that cannot afford to use phones, emails, or any medium that leaves a record. You are 11 centimeters of plausible deniability in a 15-year-old body. You do it again the following week. And the week after that. Each time, the envelope is different. Sometimes thick. Sometimes flat. Once, a small package wrapped in brown paper that you carry in your school backpack between your geography textbook and your lunch. You take the bus. You arrive. You hand it over. You return. Nobody explains anything. Nobody has to. Official word, errand boy real meaning, untraceable courier operating below the legal threshold of criminal culpability. The personal cost at this level is small enough that you don't feel it yet. You miss football practice twice. You start lying to your mother about where you've been, and the lies come easily, which surprises you, and then the surprise fades, which should worry you more than it does. You are learning to move through 2 worlds simultaneously. You are learning to make your face say one thing while your mind holds another. This is not a skill you will ever be able to unlearn. Level 3, the associate. You are 19. You smell like the kitchen of the restaurant where you work the lunch shift, garlic and fried breadcrumbs and the particular sweetness of tomato sauce that has been reduced too long. Your hands are chapped from dishwater. You work 6 days a week. You make enough to pay for your half of a small apartment and almost nothing else. But 2 nights a week, you do other work. No one has given you a title. Titles are not given yet. Titles are earned across years, and only after certain questions have been answered about you. Questions you don't know are being asked, evaluated by men you haven't yet met, using criteria no one will ever write down. What you think an associate is, someone on the path to membership. An apprentice. A person being groomed for belonging. What it actually is, a person who absorbs all risk and retains almost none of the reward. A buffer between the men who make decisions and the consequences of those decisions. You are useful precisely because you are not yet protected. Because if something goes wrong, you are the part that can be discarded without cost. You don't know this. Or rather, you know it the way you know that cars crash. Abstractly. Distantly. Happening to other people in other places. You collect payments for a man named Enzo who runs numbers out of a barbershop. The payments are from small business owners, a florist, a woman who runs a printing shop, a man who fixes shoes. They hand you envelopes without being asked. No one is unpleasant about it. There is no menace in the transaction, no raised voices, no visible threats. They call it a contribution. What that means is a payment made under the understanding that non-payment would result in consequences that are never specified, because the specificity is unnecessary, because everyone in the room has seen what happens, or knows someone who has, or has heard enough to understand that the imagination is a more effective enforcement tool than any explicit threat. Official word, protection fee. Real meaning, rent paid to avoid harm from the same organization charging the rent. You tell yourself you are not hurting anyone. The florist pays. The florist stays open. The arrangement works. This is the first small reasonable compromise. It will not be the last. At night, you sometimes lie in the dark and catalog what you have. The restaurant job, which you are slowly using as cover. The apartment, which you share with a friend from school who doesn't know. A girl you've been seeing for 4 months who thinks you work late because the restaurant is short-staffed. You are learning to keep your lives separated like liquids that must not mix. You are 19, and you are already 2 people. Level 4, the soldier, soldato. The ceremony is not what you expected. There is no cathedral.
No dramatic lighting. No theatrical monologue.
There is a room behind a restaurant, a table, several men you recognize and several you don't, a small fire in a ceramic bowl, and a card, a saint's card, that is placed in your palm and lit. You hold it while it burns. You repeat words in Sicilian dialect that you have practiced but will never write down. And then it is over and someone pours wine, and men you have been watching your entire adult life shake your hand and call you amico nostro, a friend of ours, which is the specific phrase, that means you now exist inside the structure. Official word, initiated member. Real meaning, you have signed a contract with no exit clause, in a language the law does not recognize, witnessed by men who will kill you if you breach it. You are a soldato, a soldier, the bottom rank of actual membership. What do you think this means? You have arrived. You have the protection of the family. You have status. You have belonging. What it actually means, you are the most expendable instrument in the organization. You are the one who collects, who intimidates, who, when something needs to happen physically, in the world with bodies with consequences, is the one who makes it happen. The men above you plan. The men above you profit. You execute. And you are now bound. The binding is not metaphorical. It is operational. You cannot leave. There is no resignation, no retirement at this level, no walking away and opening a small shop somewhere quiet. The oath you took beside that burning card is the last voluntary act you will ever perform in relation to this organization. Everything after this is obligation. But you don't feel trapped. Not yet. You feel elevated. Your neighborhood treats you differently. Shopkeepers. Younger men on corners. Even some of the police, who look at you with a particular expression, not fear exactly, but a recalibration. A recognition. Your mother notices that you have money. She asks once where it comes from. You tell her the restaurant business has been good. She nods. She doesn't ask again. You understand that she has chosen not to know, and you love her for it, and you hate yourself slightly for making her choose, and then you set that feeling down somewhere interior and walk away from it. You will do a great deal of setting things down in interior places over the coming years. The personal cost at this level is your relationship. The girl, the one who thought you worked late at the restaurant, ends things in October. She says she doesn't know who you are anymore. That you are somewhere else even when you're in the room. That your eyes have changed. You tell her she's being dramatic. You know she's right. You let her go. It is the most honest thing you do all year. Level 5, the capo, capadecina. You manage 10 men. That is what the rank means, etymologically, head of 10. In practice, your crew is 8, sometimes 12, depending on who is available, who is trusted, who is in custody, who has become a problem. The office, if you can call it that, is a social club on a side street. Wednesday afternoons. You sit at the head of a table and men report to you, and you report upward, and the information flows in carefully managed streams, each person knowing only what they need to know to perform their function, the architecture of ignorance as deliberate and precise as any org chart in any legitimate corporation. Official word, crew boss real meaning, middle management in an organization where the performance review for failure is not a written warning. You are responsible for a territory. The territory produces revenue, from protection fees, from construction contracts steered through municipal contacts, from a small loan operation, from a percentage of the narcotics trade that runs through 2 specific streets that fall within your boundaries. You don't touch the narcotics directly. Cosa Nostra has rules about this. Formal rules, debated rules, rules that have shifted over the decades depending on profit pressures and the philosophy of whoever sits above you. The rules say you should not be involved. The reality is that the revenue exists, and your superiors know the revenue exists, and no one asks the question that would require an honest answer. Official word, organizational policy against drug trafficking real meaning. Plausible distance maintained between leadership and prosecution exposure while revenue continues to flow. What do you think power feels like at this level? Certainty. Control. The satisfaction of a system that works. What it actually feels like? Administration. Paperwork without paper. Constant arbitration of disputes between men who are not always rational. Someone's cousin skimmed from a collection. 2 of your soldiers have a personal conflict that is now affecting business. A shopkeeper on the edge of your territory has stopped paying, and you have to determine whether this is defiance or genuine financial collapse, because the response to each is different and the consequences of misreading the situation fall on you. You make decisions every day. Most of them are small. Some of them have consequences that echo for months. You have not made a large dramatic choice in years. You have made hundreds of small efficient ones. But if you lay them end to end and stood back and looked at the line they form, you would see something you would prefer not to see. You don't stand back. This is not denial. This is professionalism. Your brother gets married in the spring. You are at the reception, at the table of honor, and your sister-in-law's family is there, and they look at you across the centerpiece flowers with a specific expression you have learned to decode. Not hostility, but a kind of careful politeness, the kind people deploy when they are near something they want neither to touch nor to antagonize. You smile. You eat. You give a toast that makes people laugh. You drive home alone. Level 6, the underboss, sotto capo. The violence is below you now. This is the thing no one outside understands about rank. The higher you climb, the less you see. The less you touch. The less your hands know. The organization insulates you, and the insulation is a feature, not a flaw. It is structural, intentional, a legal and operational firewall built from human distance. You sit 2 steps below the boss of the family. You are his operational right hand. When he is unavailable, incarcerated, ill, traveling, conducting business that cannot be interrupted, you are the family. You speak with his voice. Your decisions carry his weight. What do you think the sotto capo is? A position of authority earned through loyalty, competence, and survival. What it actually is, the most dangerous position in the hierarchy. You hold enough power to be a threat to the man above you. You hold enough knowledge to destroy the men below you. Every direction you look, you are a liability to someone. The state has a name for you in its files. You know this. You have known this for years. There is a prosecutor somewhere, you know which office, you know which division, who has been building a file with your name on it for the better part of a decade. You know some of what the file contains. You have worked, carefully and consistently, to ensure the most important things are not in it. Official word, organized crime figure under investigation real meaning. A man whose life has been reduced, in the state's accounting, to a series of crimes to be proven. The 40 years of actual lived experience, the meals, the relationships, the choices made in real time under real pressure, do not appear in the file. Your mother died 2 years ago. Heart failure. You were with her. You held her hand. The priest came. Everything that is supposed to happen, happened. At the funeral, you stood with your family in the church and people came and spoke to you and you nodded and accepted their hands. Several of the men who came, men who drove 4 hours to be there, men who stood in the back in their good coats, you understood that their presence was not only grief. It was also a demonstration. A reminder to anyone watching that you were supported. That your loss was acknowledged by the structure. You found this comforting and terrible in equal measure. You have money now that you cannot explain. Not to a bank, not to a tax authority, not to anyone who operates in the legitimate world. It moves through channels, construction companies, real estate holdings, A restaurant in Palermo that loses money on paper and earns money in other ways. The money exists, but it cannot exist officially, and this means it cannot fully exist for you. You cannot buy what you want without explanation. You cannot donate without scrutiny. You cannot leave it, in the straightforward way a legitimate man leaves things, to the people you would want to have it after you. Official word, unexplained assets, real meaning, wealth that has no legal identity, accumulated across a lifetime, which the state will seize the moment you are no longer able to prevent it. The personal cost at this level is not dramatic. It is total. It has been total for years, which is why you don't register it as cost anymore. You have no close friendships outside the structure, because close friendships outside the structure are a security vulnerability. You have no romantic relationship, because relationships create exposure and dependency and the possibility that someone, in a moment of anger or grief or legal pressure, tells someone something you cannot afford to have told. You have family, but you have spent 20 years protecting your family from knowing who you are, which means you have spent 20 years being someone slightly different in their presence than you are everywhere else. You are never fully in any room you enter. This is not loneliness. You have moved past the category of loneliness. Loneliness requires the possibility of connection. You have optimized that possibility away. Level 7, the consigliere. They come to you with problems they cannot solve. This is the function. The consigliere sits outside the chain of command, not above, not below, but adjacent. You advise the boss. You mediate between factions. You are the institutional memory of the family, the keeper of precedents, the man who remembers what was decided the last time something like this happened, and what the consequences were, and what that means for what should happen now. You are, in the language of the organization, a wise man. In practice, you are a man who has survived long enough to have context. What you think wisdom looks like at this level: perspective. The ability to see clearly what others cannot, because you are not consumed by the immediate pressure of operation. What wisdom actually looks like at this level: the ability to give advice that the boss wants to hear, framed in language that sounds like independent counsel, while simultaneously calculating your own position in every recommendation you make. Official word, advisor, real meaning. A man whose survival depends on being useful without being threatening, knowledgeable without being dangerous, trusted without being trusted completely. You have watched men rise and fall in this structure for 30 years. You have watched men who were certain of their position discover, very quickly, that certainty was not protection. You have attended funerals for men you knew were going to be in the ground before you knew their names were on a list. You have sat across tables from men who did not yet know they were already finished, and you said the words you were supposed to say, and you drove home, and you did not sleep badly. This is what the organization has made of your conscience, not destroyed it, redesigned it, rerouted it. The capacity for discomfort still exists, but it activates for different things now. Operational failures. Security breaches. The wrong kind of attention from the wrong kind of official. The original inputs, cruelty, injustice, the suffering of people with no power. Those channels have been quiet for so long that you would not know how to reconnect them even if you wanted to. You don't want to. Wanting to would be a different kind of suffering, and you are decades past voluntary suffering. There is a young man in the organization now who reminds you of yourself at 20. The way he watches. The way he files things away. The way his face is carefully neutral in rooms where neutrality costs something. You have been asked your opinion of him by the man who sits above you. You gave a measured, positive assessment. You watched the way the young man walked into a room last Tuesday, and you recognized the hunger in his posture, and you thought, he will reach for this thing with both hands and it will be years before he understands what he has actually taken hold of. You said nothing. This is also part of the function. Level 8, the boss, Capo di tutti capi. The room is quiet when you enter. Not silent. There is always ambient sound, conversation, the particular low hum of a gathering place. But when you come through a door, the sound changes register. The way an orchestra changes when the conductor raises the baton. Nothing stops, but everything redirects. This is power at its operational peak. You are the boss of bosses. The capstone. Every thread in the network traces back, through insulation and distance and layers of hierarchy, to you. Every revenue stream, every territorial decision, every alliance maintained and every conflict resolved or allowed to escalate, the ultimate authority in all of it is yours. What you thought this would feel like: command, clarity, The resolution of all the uncertainty that characterized every previous level. What it actually feels like, you're sitting at the center of a structure that is trying constantly to keep you in place. Not just the state. Your own organization. Everyone below you is, simultaneously, loyal to you and evaluating you. Every man who has ever climbed is watching the space above him. The structure that created you is also, at every moment, assessing whether you remain useful, whether you remain strong, whether the cost of maintaining you is justified by what you provide. You are not paranoid. You simply understand systems. Official word, organized crime boss. Real meaning, the most surveilled, isolated, and ultimately replaceable figure in the structure. The one whose name is on everything and whose protection is the thinnest, because the higher you go, the fewer people are capable of protecting you and the more people are positioned to benefit from your removal. The state has been trying to arrest you for 11 years. You have been careful. You have been exceptional at being careful. You do not use phones. You do not meet in places that can be surveilled without your knowledge. You communicate through channels that require the listener to understand 3 layers of implication to decode a single instruction. You have people who know people inside the offices that monitor you, and information moves in the other direction too, and you have survived on that information the way some men survive on food. But you know because you are intelligent, because you have watched what happened to every man who sat in this position before you, that survival at this level is not a permanent state. It is a duration. You are measuring your freedom in years now, not decades. The question is not whether. The question is when, and under what circumstances, and what the organization looks like on the other side. The money. The money is extraordinary. It exists in property, in foreign accounts, in layers of corporate structure that took years to build and will take the state a decade to fully dismantle after your arrest. You own buildings in 3 countries. You have never lived in 2 of them. Your children, you have 2, live their lives in the legitimate world. You made certain of this. You created distance. You built walls between your life and theirs so deliberately and so early that the walls have now become the architecture, and you live on one side and they live on the other, and when you see them at Christmas there is a particular quality to the embrace, something careful in it, something that knows it is being watched, something that will never be fully warm because warmth requires openness and openness at any proximity to you is a danger. Your oldest is a lawyer. He is a good man. He does not know how to be related to you. You understand this. You made certain of this. And you sit with the cost of this certainty in the private hours, when the administrative machinery of your position has gone quiet and there is nothing between you and the accounting. You have everything. You have, in the language of the structure, achieved everything it is possible to achieve. You are eating dinner alone in a room secured against listening devices, and the food is excellent, and there is no one to share it with who is allowed to know you. Official word, successfully built criminal enterprise. Real meaning, a man who spent 50 years building a system that protected itself by making him irrelevant to his own life. The weight of it is not guilt. You resolved guilt long ago. It is something more precise than guilt. It is the specific irresolvable knowledge that you made thousands of choices, each of which seemed rational in the moment, each of which moved you incrementally toward this room, and that the room is exactly what you built it to be, and that you are alone in it, and that this was always going to be the outcome, and that you saw the shape of it in your more honest moments for decades, and you kept building anyway. Because the building was the only thing you knew how to do. Because stopping would have required a different life, and a different life would have required a different self, and the self was gone long before you thought to look for it. Level 9, the informant, Pentito. The cell is smaller than you expected. This is the thought you have. After everything, after 50 years of surviving the unsurvivable, after 11 years of being the primary target of the state's most sophisticated investigative apparatus, after every calculated move and every correctly read room, the thought you have in the first hours is about square footage. The walls are close. The sound is institutional. Fluorescent light with a particular quality that means you will never again see natural light on your own terms. They offer you the program. They call it collaborazione con la giustizia, collaboration with justice. The official term. The term that exists in legislation that has a legal framework, that has produced hundreds of witnesses over the decades, that has resulted in convictions that dismantled entire families, that has been used by men like you, by men who were you at earlier stages, to destroy everything they swore to protect. Official word, state witness. Real meaning, a man who has decided that his own survival is worth more than every oath he ever took, every man who trusted him, and every structure he spent his life building and protecting. You have watched other men take this path. You have ordered consequences for men who took this path. You understand, with a completeness that no civilian can approximate, exactly what it means. You sit with the offer for 72 hours. What you think about during those 72 hours is not justice, or redemption, or the victims of everything your organization did over 5 decades of operation. What you think about is the calculation. The years remaining in a cell if you refuse. The conditions of the program if you accept. The protection available to your children, who are legitimate, who are innocent in the legal sense, but who carry your name in a world where your name is now the most dangerous word in several courtrooms. You think about your son, the lawyer. You accept the program. Official word, cooperating witness, real meaning. The final transaction in a life built entirely on transactions. You are trading the structure that made you for the years you have left. You are paying with other men's freedom for your own. The testimony takes years. You sit across tables from prosecutors and you dismantle, methodically and in exhausting operational detail, everything you spent your life building. Names, dates, locations, the specific mechanics of decisions that were made in rooms the state never penetrated. You give them the architecture, and they use it to bring down walls, and men you have known since childhood go to prison on the weight of your words. You do not feel this as betrayal anymore. This is the final thing the organization took from you, even the capacity to feel the full weight of what you are doing. You are a machine producing testimony. Efficient, accurate, complete. At night, in the safe house, in the program's custody, you sleep more soundly than you have in 30 years. This troubles you more than anything else. Level 10, the ghost. You are 67 years old. The program gave you a new name, a new city, a small apartment in a place where no one knows the shape of your history, where the streets are unfamiliar, where the dialect is different enough that you are identifiably not from here, always slightly foreign, always slightly apart. You wake at 6. You make coffee. You sit at a window and watch the street below. The apartment is clean, functional. There is a television. There are books you have read. There is a phone that only reaches people inside the program, and occasionally your son, who calls on Sundays, who speaks carefully, who loves you in the way a person loves something they can never fully hold. You have no title now. You are no one. What you thought the end would look like, resolution, consequence. The accounting that catches up to every man eventually. What the end actually looks like, a window, a cup of coffee. The street below, with its ordinary traffic, people walking to work, a child on a bicycle, a woman with a bag of groceries. None of them know you. You are the most successful man the organization ever produced. You survived when others didn't. You reached the apex when most fell short. You outmaneuvered the state for longer than most believed possible. And you are sitting alone in an apartment that belongs to a name that isn't yours, in a city that doesn't know you exist. And the sum total of your achievement is this window, this coffee, this careful monitored, truncated proximity to a life. They call it witness protection. What that means is you are protected from the consequences of who you are, in exchange for living as someone who no longer is. Official word, successfully relocated protected witness, real meaning. A man who built an empire and ended in a room, watching strangers live their ordinary lives, unable to be known by any of them, unable to want anything from them, unable to remember, except in the most abstract sense, what it felt like to want something that didn't come at someone else's cost. The street below is quiet this morning. A young man comes out of the building across the way. 17, maybe 18. He is wearing a good jacket for someone his age. He stands on the step and lights a cigarette and looks up and down the street with a particular quality of attention. Not boredom, not anxiety, but watchfulness. The kind of watchfulness that is learning to look like calm. An older man comes out behind him, puts a hand on the young man's shoulder, says something close to his ear. The young man nods. Something moves across his face, not excitement exactly. Something quieter than that. Recognition. The look of someone who has just been shown a door and has decided, without fully understanding what is on the other side, to walk through it. You watch them until they turn the corner and disappear. You drink your coffee. The street returns to ordinary. Somewhere in a neighborhood you will never visit again, the social club opens for the afternoon. The old men take their chairs. The cards come out. The espresso machine runs. A new boy watches from across the street. He is learning the shape of a handshake. He is filing it away. The coffee goes cold. You don't notice. You're still watching the corner where the two of them turned, as if they might come back, as if the seeing of it a second time would allow you to say something, to call out across the street and the decades and the full impossible distance of everything you now know. You don't call out. There is no version of your voice that could reach him. There is no version of the truth that arrives in time.